The 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition, also known as the St. Louis World's Fair, was an interesting but important event to say the least. We're going back to 1904 when St. Louis hosted a centennial celebration of the Louisiana Purchase, even though it wasn't 1803, but whatever. Originally, that same summer, Chicago was supposed to host the Olympics, the first American city to do so, but when St. Louis threatened to more or less have their own version, the Olympics were moved to St. Louis, and they were ultimately made part of the entire thing. This was how the travesty that was the 1904 Olympic Marathon ended up in St. Louis, which was part of the marathon's problem, but we covered that entire shit show in its own video. Anywho, we've mentioned in a previous video that both the hamburger and hot dog gained prominence from the Expo, but supposedly it was also the jump-off point for cotton candy, the waffle cone, iced tea, no, not that one, yes, that one, peanut butter, and Dr. Pepper. Many have actually referred to the Expo as America's first food court. Also, quite a few new or new-ish inventions were put on display and or demonstrated at the fair. These included the X-ray machine, the infant incubator, and a not-so-fun fact here, they set up the infant incubators and used 24 premature babies in them as part of the exhibit, but yeah, not all of them survived. The radiophone, or wireless telephony, an invention of Alexander Graham Bell, was also shown, a device that transmitted sound wirelessly by transforming sound waves into light waves and then changing them back on the other end. This, of course, would lead to the invention of radio, wireless technology, all that good stuff. They also had the telautograph, which was an early version of the fax machine that used a pen to draw whatever was being written or drawn at the transmission source. And that brings us to transportation, and the fair was huge on transportation. They had electric rail cars on display, as well as the public introduction of the personal automobile. They had 140 automobiles on display, a mixture of gas, electric, and steam powered. And keep in mind, this was 4 years before the introduction of the Model T. They also held the first ever airship contest where different designs for airplanes were tested out. So basically just imagine that you're used to riding a horse or a wagon or, something like that, and suddenly you show up and there are cars and airplanes. And once that was done blowing your mind, you made your way to the human exhibits. Yeah, we covered some of them in our video on human zoos, but the Expo had over 1,100 Filipinos brought in. And no, not all of them survived the journey, but the people in charge had already bought several burial plots at 2 different cemeteries, so they had thought ahead. There were exhibits of Apache, members of the Tlingit peoples in an Alaskan exhibit, several other native tribes, as well as Congolese and quite a few other places. The whole idea was basically look at how backwards and primitive these people are as compared to us. They also produced what was advertised as the, and I quote, greatest and most realistic military spectacle known in the history of the world. And by that, they meant reenactments of the Second Boer War. Featured were a British Army camp, several South African native villages, including Zulu, San, Swazi, and Ndumble, as well as a 15-acre arena where soldiers paraded, sporting events and horse races were held, and major battles from the war were reenacted twice a day. These reenactments took 2 to 3 hours and included several generals and 600 veteran soldiers from both sides of the war. And of course, let's not forget that every show ended with a Boer general escaping on horseback by leaping 35 feet into a pool of water. And that, of course, brings us to the bullfight. See, bullfighting is illegal in the United States. More specifically, it's also illegal in the state of Missouri. But this didn't stop Richard Norris from advertising a bullfight, hiring some of Spain's top bullfighters, and building an arena that seated 16,000 people. The show started with horse riding and lacrosse, but just as the bullfights were about to begin, the county sheriff shut it down on orders from the governor. This did not go over well, and neither did the news that none of the 8,000 people that paid $1 each to watch a bullfight were going to get a refund. This, of course, led to them attacking the building, finding and freeing 3 ill and emaciated bulls, which convinced the mob that it had always been a scam. So with that knowledge, they ended up burning the arena to the ground. By the way, yeah, it was absolutely a scam. Plus, one bullfighter ended up murdering another bullfighter days later over payment for the event. Oh, and let's not forget the Ferris wheel, where a worker fell while greasing it and died, marking the 9th person to die on that particular Ferris wheel, which had traveled for several years. It was afterward scrapped and buried somewhere, we're not quite sure, but we do know that that was the end of the most prolific amusement park ride serial killer in American history.